Hey all, welcome back. So this is our day 8 of Python beginners tutorial playlist. So the first thing I want to talk about is dictionaries in Python. Now, dictionaries in Python work kind of similarly to dictionaries in real life, right? So if you were to look up a word in the dictionary, say the word code, then you might find the definition as something along the lines of program instructions for the computer. And dictionaries are really useful because they allow us to group together and tag related pieces of information. Every dictionary has two parts to it. On the left hand side is the key, and that is equivalent of the word in the dictionary, and then it's also got an associated value that would be the equivalent of the actual definition of the word. The first thing we want to do is we want them to create a dictionary. And to do that in Python, this is what the syntax looks like. We have a set of curly braces, and everything that's inside the curly brace is the content of our dictionary. Let's take a look at dictionaries in action. I have already added the dictionary and I have stored it inside a called variable called programming dictionary. Now, currently, I have only got two entries in this dictionary, the definition for a bug and the definition for function. Now, the first thing I want to highlight is when you create a dictionary that has more than one element, such as in this case, then you want to take care to format it properly so that it's more easily readable. So, what you will see Python programmers do by convention is they will start off the dictionary with the open curly brace at the top, and then every subsequent entry is indented by one indent. And then at the very end of that entry, there's a comma, and then we hit enter so that the next item goes on to the next line, and finally, the last curly brace should go at the very beginning and line with the start of the dictionary. And if we wanted to add another entry, it's as simple as adding in the key, a colon, and then the value, and to cap it off again with a comma. Now, the next thing I want to do is what if I wanted to retrieve an item from the dictionary, because we know that if we had a list, what we would do is we would use a set of square brackets, and then we would give the index the item that we wanted. So the item at index 0 or 1 of 1 or 2 and so on and so forth. Now, for the dictionaries, it's kind of similar in terms of syntax, but the only difference is the dictionaries have elements which are identified by their key. If we wanted this piece of information, for example, then all we have to do is tap into the dictionary and then add a set of square brackets, and inside the square brackets, we are going to provide the key. So here the key is a string and it's the string bug. So let's go ahead and put bug in here. And now if I go ahead and print this, then you can see that it's going to give me the value, which is an error in a program that prevents the program from running as expected. Now, it's really important that you make sure that when you are fetching something out of a dictionary by its key, that you actually spell the key correctly. A really common error is when you were trying to retrieve something out of a dictionary and you have just made a very simple type. So instead of U, I'm typing O. Here you will see we get an error, and the error tells that it's a key error referring to this particular key where we are trying to retrieve something out of this dictionary by this key. Basically, it's telling you that this key doesn't actually exist and it can't be found. So it doesn't know what it is that you want. Remember how when we had a list and when we tried to retrieve something that was not inside the list. So for example, this particular list at index 4 doesn't actually exist because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's actually not a piece of data inside of the list. Similarly, with dictionaries, if we try to put in a key that doesn't exist, then we get this error key. Now, another common pitfall that students fall down into is they don't actually use the correct data type. So, for example, if we defined this dictionary without putting a string around each of these keys, then it's going to error out and it won't even let us run. It's going to tell us undefined named bug because it thinks that this is a variable that you have declared somewhere, but it's not. In fact, what you wanted are these strings for keys, and so when you have a key that is string, when you are trying to retrieve the data from that key, you also have to make sure that you provide the key and its actual data type. So, for example, if this was just a number, say 1, 2, 3, then of course all you have to write in here is just 1, 2, 3, and it would know that this piece of data is what you wanted. So that's how you retrieve items from a dictionary, by adding a square bracket and then giving it the key, and it will look for the key inside the dictionary and give you back the value. Now, what if you wanted to add a piece of data such as that loop that we had earlier on, but you want to do it programmatically? So instead of doing it when you were defining the dictionary at the beginning, what if at some later stage in your program you needed to add a new entry? Well, to do this, it's also really simple. All you have to do is to tap into the dictionary, which is called programming dictionary in our case, and again using square brackets, and we define the key. The key I'm going to add is our loop. And then after a equal sign, I get to assign the value. So in my case, the value is going to be the definition for a loop. And now when this line of code is executed and we go ahead and just print the programming dictionary after this has happened, then we will see that it's actually different from what we had before. So let's hit run, and you can see that previously we had a programming dictionary that had two items, bug and function, and after we print our programming dictionary, again you can see it's now got three items: bug, function, and loop. Now, very often when you are writing code, it can be really helpful to start out with an empty dictionary. Just as you saw previously, you can create an empty list by simply having a set of square brackets with nothing inside. You can also create an empty dictionary by simply creating a set of curly braces with nothing inside. And then at a later stage, you can add to your dictionary by using this method that you saw here. Now, on the other hand, you might actually want to wipe an entire dictionary here. Here I'm creating a new empty dictionary by creating this pair of curly braces with nothing inside. Now, this method of tapping into a dictionary using the key to fetch the relevant item from it and then doing something with it goes beyond just adding. You can also use this to edit an item in a dictionary. I'm going to fetch the item that has a key of bug, and I'm going to redefine its value. So currently it should be an error in a program that prevents the program from running as expected. And I can prove that if I just wrap this around a print statement, if instead I wanted this to be a different value, then I can simply use the same syntax as I did for adding new items, but in this case I'm actually editing this entry because it's going to look through the dictionary, find a value with this key, and then assign it to whatever I put on the right hand side of the equal sign. Now, on the other hand, if it finds nothing with that key, then it's going to create a new entry with the value again on the right hand side of the equal sign. Now let's say that a bug is instead a moth in your computer. Now, if I go ahead and print my programming dictionary once more, then you can see that the definition of our bug has now just been changed. The final thing with regard to dictionaries that I think is really useful is how you loop through a dictionary. And using your knowledge from list, you might think that to loop through a dictionary, you would, let's say, we are using a for loop, and we say for thing in programming dictionary, let's go ahead and print this each time. What do you expect to be printed? So let's comment out all of the other print statements so we don't get confused. And when I click run, what do you think will be printed? Alright, is what you expected? Because it certainly wasn't what I expect when I first learned Python. I thought it would give me each of the items in the dictionary with this key and its value, but instead this code actually just give you the keys. Now, of course, once you do have access to the key instead of thing, I should actually really say for key in programming dictionary. If I wanted to print the key, then of course I could just write print key. But if I wanted to get hold of the value, I could equally just as easily tap into my dictionary, use the square brackets and pass in that key. So now when I hit run, you can see it's giving me first the key from this line and then secondly the value based on this line. I'm using that retrieval code in order to get the value. Remember that you can get access to all the code that I'm writing here by looking at the end of the code. Now that we have seen list as well as dictionaries, I want to talk about a concept that you often see in both of these collection types, and that's something called nesting of data. Let's go ahead and create some sample dictionaries. For example, this could be a dictionary that contains country as the key and the city, that is the capital, or as the value. So for UAE, that's Abu Dhabi. For Qatar, that's Doha. This is a very simple dictionary that you have seen already. Now, if I wanted to nest a list in a dictionary, then I would be able to represent even more complex data. For example, if I had a travel blog where I was going to collect a dictionary of all the cities I had been for each of the countries I have traveled to. So for example, if I had traveled to UAE and I wanted to say that I have been to multiple cities, I can't simply just say Abu Dhabi and then Dubai, Sharjah. That doesn't really work because each key can only have one value. The only way that we can make these three pieces of data one value is turning into a list. Like so. So now in our travel log dictionary, as represented by the curly braces, we have one key value pair, and it just so happens that the value in this case is a list. And of course you can go on and add as many entries as you would like, and still preserving this kind of structure of key being a string and the value being a list. Now, this idea of nesting isn't limited dictionaries, by the way. You could also just nest a list in a list. So you could have a list which is A and then B, and then the third item just happens to be another list which has C and D. This is perfectly valid Python code, but it's not quite as useful as nesting a list in a dictionary or a dictionary in a dictionary because the way the data is structured. Now, what if you wanted to nest a dictionary in a dictionary? Let's say that we want to expand our travel log, and instead of just storing the cities that I have visited in each country, what if I wanted to also keep track of how many visits I have made to that country? Or what if I wanted to actually label what this piece of data is? Because at the moment it's kind of like here's a bunch of cities that associated with with the country. But it doesn't really describe this list. By nesting a dictionary, we can label the Abu Dhabi, Dubai and Sharjah list as cities visited. All I need to do is create the string cities visited and add a colon after it. But there's no one more step. We have to add a pair of curly braces so that France is associated with a single value, namely our nested dictionary. Now that we have a dictionary of the travel log, all the countries I have been to, and each country has a value that is a dictionary in itself, and it can store multiple pieces of data including the cities I have visited in that country as well as things such as the total number of visits, which in this case would have a string as the key and a number of as the value. Now have a go at creating your own travel log or modifying the second part of the travel log so that you also have a dictionary nested in a dictionary and you are able to represent something like this. And so now our data structure is just that we have got a list nested inside a dictionary, which is in itself nested in another dictionary. Now that we have seen nesting list inside dictionaries, dictionaries inside dictionaries, the last thing I want to show you is nesting a dictionary inside a list. So we could basically have multiple dictionaries inside a single list. So remember that lists are ordered and they are accessed by the positions inside the list. So this dictionary would be the item at index 0, this one at the index 1, and so on and so forth. Whereas inside a dictionary, the items are accessed by their keys like this UAE or Qatar. Now I want to do the last type, which is nesting a dictionary in a list, and I'm going to be working with the same travel log that we had previously, but I want to change it so that instead of having this being one gained dictionary with key value pairs, I want to change it so and that each of these entries are a dictionary in itself. Instead of having UAE be the key of this dictionary here, I want to turn it into its own key value pair. Going inside the dictionary, I'm going to create a new key which is called country and then put UAE as the value for that key. So now I have an entire dictionary that has 3 pieces of data: the country visited, the cities visited, and the total number of visits. Let's do the same for Qatar as well. So now you can see we have got 2 dictionaries, and instead of holding these 2 dictionaries inside a dictionary, I'm going to change it so that it's now a list. I'm going to turn these curly braces into square brackets, and this way we can add as many of these dictionaries inside the list and iterate through item if we need to. When I have been creating dictionaries that only have 1 or 2 key value pairs, we have kind of just kept it all on one line. But once you have got more and more key value pairs in the dictionary, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and separate each of the entries, right? Like what I'm doing here. Now it's a little bit easier to see that we have a list which contains 2 items, and each item is a dictionary. Each dictionary has 3 key value pairs and they all contain different types of data. The first one has a value which is a string, the second one holds a list, and the third one holds a number or an integer. The data types inside a dictionary can be completely mixed up if you want it to, but what can't changes is you still need a key and a value separated by a colon. Now the only downside to this is you want to make sure that you are actually aware that later on when you try to pull out the number of visits, it's actually a number that you have working with rather than a string, or when you are trying to get hold of the cities visited, it's a list rather than a dictionary, for example. So, now that we have the various different types of nesting, it's time for you to actually really understand this and get to grips with this concept by completing a challenge yourself. So, that's all about today's video. So, consider subscribing and join our WhatsApp community and Instagram, which link is given in the description. So, until next video, take care and bye bye.